Iran's elite Quds Force commander, Major General Qasem Soleimani, was killed in a US airstrike without warning, taking almost everyone by surprise. And it took place on Iraqi soil, without Iraqi permission, violating the sovereignty of not one, but two Middle Eastern nations. But other than a brief knee-jerk response, stock markets were resilient. And although gold prices hit the $1,600 level for the first time in nearly 7 years, it soon retreated. Oil prices seemed to shrug off the event.
Things cooled down very fast, and traders realized that all is well. To quote the American president, the oil market is supplied. There is quite a bit of oil in the market, and most traders believe, okay, let's look at the actual situation on the ground, and they realized that, hey, oil was actually not disrupted at all.
But while the rhetoric from both the US and Iran has toned down, the tensions are far from being resolved. There continues to be deep distrust and hostility between the two nations, which could lead to flare-ups, and flare-ups could lead to war.
With the killing of General Soleimani, Iran has really used that to stoke anti-US sentiment in the region quite well, actually. And remember, Iran has the ability to choose how and when they retaliate. So they did immediately stage, 2 attacks on US bases in the region, and that did cater to the local population, who was, of course, wanting some kind of response. But we think Iran will continue to carefully calibrate their response. We don't think that they also want a broader conflict with the United States in the region either. Remember, their end game is to get the US out of the Middle East. And if they can play the longer term strategic game, that they have more of a chance of doing that.
Analysts say that instead of a war, there may be retaliatory attacks from Iran, either by proxy or through cybersecurity attacks on commercial interests in the region. And a long drawn-out protracted conflict could have a bigger impact on markets.
If things flare up again and there is a disruption in oil flowing through from the Straits of Hormuz, Asian supplies will definitely be affected, because about 80% of the oil that flows through there goes to India, China, and Japan. And of course, it will push up oil prices. Then there'll be other things to consider, and this is the reality itself. No doubt the oil market is oversupplied, and OPEC do have spare capacity, but definite disruption will push up oil prices. We would then see prices going up higher than after the attack on the Iranian general.
With so much uncertainty, what should investors do to mitigate the impact?
The key thing is to ask whether these political developments may result in a significant fallout in the economy, whether we will see a recession, a sharp slowdown, a sharp increase in oil prices, a sharp pickup in inflation, for example, a sharp increase in business costs. If the answers to all those questions are no, then I think we should not get too spooked by political developments, and we should be looking more medium-term, long-term, so that we don't miss out on opportunities. Markets, for example, stock markets, to pull back sharply in some instances, but they don't stay that way for too long. And so when they do pull back sharply, that sharp pullback presents an opportunity for investors to actually buy. And when you don't, then you miss the opportunity to make money on the way up.
Experts also caution businesses not to be complacent and urge them to have contingency plans in place should another flare-up occur.
Hostilities seem to have ceased somewhat, but businesses are very right to be worried about assets, operations, and people in the region. We've seen a number of our clients evacuate staff. We've seen a number of our clients revisit their security measures and their business continuity plans that they have in place. So we really have three pieces of advice for clients, considering that we don't think the situation is going away anytime soon. Number one, put together your best and worst case scenario of how things might impact your own business and make sure you have that ready. Number two, be monitoring triggers of the change in the situation, which could lead to either escalation of hostilities more broadly, and particularly how that might specifically impact your own business. And then number three, it's really making sure you've got a really good crisis management and business continuity plan in place.
Despite this, experts are generally positive that 2020 will be a year of modest economic rebound. But investors will have to be nimble and ready for more geopolitical issues along the way.
We've got the US elections coming up at the end of this year. We've got Brexit that is still playing out. We've got other developments in the Middle East and Europe. The US-China trade situation is can still be fluid. So I think investors must be ready for a volatile 2020. But that volatility, as I've said, can actually create opportunities. There will be modest returns this year based on what we think, given the economic and valuation backdrop. But investors also have to be realistic with their expectations. Last year was an exceptional year. That exceptional year will not be repeated in 2020, but it will be a decent year.
For now, both Iran and the US face domestic opposition to any further conflict.